Grace, today we're going to be doing a lesson on how to organize our thoughts for an expository piece of writing. Do you know what expository means? Okay, how about explanatory writing? Have you ever heard of that word? Okay, that's the kind of writing that you do when you want to explain something to somebody. So we're going to be doing a descriptive piece, which is where you describe the pros and cons. And in this case, it's going to be the pros and cons of a certain job that you might like to do someday. So first we're going to read this book called How I Became a Pirate, and it's about a boy who thinks he wants to be a pirate, and then he discovers that it's not all it's cracked up to be. There's some good things about it, and there's some not so good things about it. Now, as you're reading, I would like you to keep in mind, if you can look over here, when we read out loud, we talk about things called fluency, and fluency is 4 things. It's your pace, so not too fast, not too slow, just right. It's your phrasing, which you don't read one word at a time like a robot like this. You want to read, natural phrasing, putting words together. Your intonation is your expression. So your voice goes up sometimes if there's a question. Sometimes you make the sounds that the characters would make. You just want to speak naturally. And then you also pay attention to punctuation. You slow down at the commas, you stop at the periods, and you show excitement and enthusiasm if you have exclamation points. So basically you want to sound natural, you don't want to go too fast or too slow, and you want to sound like the character. So I'm going to start and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And then after I read the first page, I want you to kind of judge me, like let me know how I did with my pace, my phrasing, my intonation, and my punctuation. Okay? And then you're going to read the rest. We're going to take turns. Okay? So, pirates have green teeth when they have any teeth at all. I know about pirates because one day, when I was at the beach building a sandcastle and minding my own business, a pirate ship sailed into view. I knew what it was because its flag had a skull and crossbones on it, and because I could hear the pirates singing, "Hey ho, blow the man down." They were a little off key. Okay, did you notice a couple of different things that I did there? What did you notice about my voice when I was reading? Okay, I sang the part of the pirates. All right. How about punctuation? Any particular punctuation that I paid attention to?
Periods and commas.
Okay, what did I do when I came to a comma?
You took a breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
You stopped at the periods.
Right. Comma is a place where you can take your breath and then you stop at the periods. Okay? All right, so you want to give it a try?
I tried to tell Dad, but he was busy setting up the beach umbrella. I tried to tell Mom, but she was slapping my baby sister with some. So I went back to my sandcastle, but I kept an eye on the pirates by the time they were rowing to shore.
Okay. Yeah. Now I want to talk about the way this book is organized. They tell you the pros and the cons of being a pirate. So if you could right now, could you fill out this sheet, and you can go back to the book in case you don't remember if you want to look back. But what were some of the good things about being a pirate? So that we would call that the pros. And then what were some of the cons or the bad things about being a pirate? So just take you a few minutes to write your list.
I spelled hygiene.
Hygiene. Hygiene. That word is not really spelled the way it sounds. So you're making bullet points. That's good. Your list, your pros and your cons. Okay. So what did you say was some of the good things about being a pirate?
No dental or oral hygiene.
It's a good
no
way.
manners, no veggies, staying up past bedtime.
And they sound like fun things to do, right? Not having to follow any rules. But what is the con side of that? What's the downside?
No comforting at bad crises.
No comforting in
No
bed.
books. No good.
No, yeah. And these are things that. Oh, nice. You have plural. Yes, excellent. You would miss this one, wouldn't you, Grace? Yeah, not having any books around. Yeah, pirates don't read, I suppose, or they don't do a lot of reading. Okay, now these are fantastic ideas. So, what I want to do with this, if we were going to write a short little writing piece about the pros and cons of being a pirate, I want to show you a certain kind of sentence that we're going to talk about in your writing today. It's called a complex sentence. And a complex sentence is made up of what we call a dependent clause and an independent clause. And a dependent clause is one that has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand by itself. It depends on somebody else. It depends on the other clause. And then independent clause, just like people become independent as they get older, that can stand by itself. Okay, it has a subject and a verb, and it makes sense. So if I took this, can you read this one for me? This is the dependent.
Since pirates don't have rules to have to follow rules.
Since pirates don't have to follow rules. And can you hold this one up for me? If I attach the independent clause, what is the independent clause?
They don't do anything they don't want to do.
But do you see if I took that away, if this were capitalized, would this make sense by itself?
No.
Why don't you try reading it?
They don't do anything they don't want to do.
Does that make sense on its own? You don't think so? Why not?
Because it just doesn't make sense. Because what are they don't doing what they don't want to do?
Right, we don't know that, but this is, I want you to see this is an independent clause. This will stand on its own. Now obviously you would have more writing before it, so that then it would make more sense, but it has a subject and it has a verb. So it is independent, it could stand on its own. Now when we put it together with the dependent clause, we get one complex sentence. Okay? Since pirates don't have to follow rules, they don't
do anything they don't want to do.
Okay, and that is you use the word sophisticated. Another complex sentence. Okay, so although pirates do whatever they want to do, so this is your dependent clause. Go ahead. We're going to attach the independent clause to it.
Sometimes you want rules so you know that people care about you.
And that's what Jeremy ran into in the story, right? He kind of missed having some rules. So we put this all together, and we get the sophisticated complex sentence. Although pirates do whatever they want to do.
Sometimes you want rules so you know that people care about you.
Exactly, okay? Now, do you notice any, oh, by the way, before I go on, what part of the essay would this go with? Would this go with the pros or the cons?
Cons.
This is the cons, so this is the bad part of being a pirate. So this is the good part. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do, which sounds like fun. But as Jeremy discovers, it's not really that much fun. And then we have, this goes with the cons of being. And this is a graphic organizer. Grace, take a look. Okay. So this is a list of pros and cons for the job of being a teacher. All right, I want you to just take a look. We're going to use this as a model, as a sample. Can you read what some of the pros of being a teacher are?
You get respect from educated people. You get summers off. You get Christmas and spring break off. You get retirement benefits. You know, lots of stuff. Kids are fun to teach.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of those. Those are some of the wonderful things about being a teacher. But like any job, Grace, there's another side to it. So the cons of being a teacher are you're hated by the dropouts. You know, students don't get good grades. Sometimes they want to blame it on their teacher. The pay isn't great. You have to give too many tests. You know, teachers don't like to give tests either. You have to grade homework at night. You get blamed for kids who don't want to learn. And discipline problems, and we talked a little bit about that, right? See the word that's underlined?
Because.
Yes, but the word is because. That's kind of word we call a subordinating conjunction. Here, I have a list for you of subordinating conjunctions. You use subordinating conjunctions when you make your complex sentences. So words like although is a subordinating conjunction. A word like since is a subordinating conjunction because it introduces the subordinate. Now, based on the pros and cons on this list, we're going to come up with a pro sentence and a con sentence. And the pro sentence, let me scroll down for you. Since my smart board's not being smart. Okay, can you take a look? Can you read that pro sentence for me?
Teachers get summers off because they need the time to recover from filling out report cards.
Okay. Now, do you see the word that's underlined?
Because.
Yes, but the word is because. That's kind of word we call a subordinating conjunction. Here, I have a list for you of subordinating conjunctions. You use subordinating conjunctions when you make your complex sentences. So, words like although is a subordinating conjunction. A word like since is a subordinating conjunction because it introduces the subordinate clause. Now, when I told you about the clauses before, I called them dependent, remember? But I want you to know that another name for them is subordinate. Now, where have you heard a word like that before? Does that sound familiar? No,
Okay.
From your vocabulary. What vocabulary word do you have that is very similar to that? Do you remember the vocabulary word? Which one is it? I know I'm putting you on the spot, right? It's when somebody doesn't listen to what their boss tells them to do. Not downtrodden.
This.
Which one?
This.
Oh, it could be a misdeed. You're right. All right, let me give you one more clue. It has sub in it.
Subordinate.
Put something in front of it. To be subordinate means to be below somebody. Any thought? I know you told me at the beginning of the lesson that you weren't quite sure what you wanted to do, but if you had to pick something, I don't know, maybe it's something you've thought about, maybe it's something you've talked to your family about. You can pick, you know, it doesn't mean just because you write it down, this is what you have to do for the rest of your life. You didn't. You didn't pick that one. Can you say, yes, you want to be an author someday? I think you'd be a fantastic author. Because you like book clubs and your book buddies, and I think, wouldn't that be neat for you to do that for children, since you enjoy it so much? So now, what you're doing is excellent. Now you're listing your pros and cons. Let's make your pro sentence. So this is a sentence that you would probably use to introduce the paragraph where you talk about the good things about being an author. So you want to summarize some of the ideas.
I would be a good author because I love to read and write.
I'll work on a con sentence. So you're going to do the same thing you did for the pro side, but using the reasons against being an author. You try to throw in a subordinating conjunction to make it a complex sentence.
I would never be an author since I get no peace of mind.
Okay. Very good. We got the makings of a pretty good piece of writing. So now, this should look familiar. Do you remember when you organized your essay about the Olympics?
Yeah.
And we did it in different sections. So this would be your first paragraph. Now, we're not writing the full essay right now. This is just still part of the organizing process, because the whole point is to get your ideas together. So when you organize, you definitely want to have two things in your introduction. Do you know what those two things are that you want to have?
What job you want to be, and you would discuss the pros and cons.
Okay, you could talk a little bit about that, but what do we want to start with? Like the very first sentence, even before you give your topic, it's going to grab your reader's attention.
When I grow up, I would like to be an author.
Okay. We could start with that, but you always want to begin with something we call a hook or a grabber. I'm sure you've heard us talk about that before, where it hooks the reader in. It's something really creative. Now, I remember when you wrote your essay about the Olympics, you talked about how they were the glue that held all the nations together. And that was really clever. Now, if you don't know what your hook's going to be right now, we can always come back to it. Think of a different way of saying what you just said to wrap everything up. Like, how would you want to end?
Now, with writing, there are your pros and your cons.
Okay.
Writing, it.
I think you should write down what you have so far. Sometimes getting it out, and since you are a writer and you're good at it, I think you think well that way. You think well when you're writing down your ideas. Pros and cons. However, what do you think? However, what? There's pros and cons. It's like with anything in life. You know, there's good things and bad things. Is it all worthwhile in the end, or is it?
However, it is pretty worth it to see that people are learning from your writing.
Love it. That's a good idea. Now, you have the skeleton, you have the structure of a very excellent essay. And I think as you saw with your one about the Olympics, once you have this, everything else kind of flows from there. And you can always, it's like an artist, you paint a little here and you paint a little there and you make it pretty and you add some fanciful words and you already have some really nice words. So I think you definitely have a good thing to start with. Okay?